My first week in Berlin, a friend called and asked me if I was lonely. I said no. I said no, how can I be lonely when I am listening to 5 podcast episodes a day? At the time, it was This American Life. Every day, I would sift through episode after episode as I walked through a city that was still new and shiny and sexy. Ira Glass held my hand on the bus from Hamburg to Berlin, from Berlin to Paris, from Paris to Barcelona. If you saw me on the street, you would know that I wasn't lonely because I was in a constant state of reaction, and reaction suggests that there is a someone to react to. Once, on the metro, he made me cry. But I wasn't embarrassed because his voice was a shoulder that offered comfort and care. Sometimes at cafes he would tell me a joke and we'd laugh and laugh, him in my ear and I towards the public. Anyone who saw me would have instantly known that I was in the company of a good and dear friend. The intimacy we built was unparalleled. He was there anytime I wanted him. And being there, with Ira, was not being next to Ira. It was not being besides Ira, where the space between us let light, shadow, and air create friction. Being with Ira was having him in my organism, incorporating him into my body as his voice swirled in my ears and danced patterns on my brain. When he talked to me, he lived in my body, and our friendship reverberated through my flesh. His voice closer than the shoulders I bumped while listening to episode 349 on the metro, one headphone in and the other tucked into my t-shirt, keeping me half in Ira and I's world and half in another. In these times, his voice offered more than flesh. His voice was not a supplement, but the thing in itself. As the whole of Ira Glass was encoded in his words and the in-betweens, the sighs and swallows that reminded that the voice is just an appendage of the body. It was the whole of him because I knew it was the closest we would ever get. The voice was not a supplement for our relationship until we'd get to spend time together. The voice was and is the entirety of what our friendship will be. Ira Glass and I have reached our full intimate potential, and it looks like me taking a walk with the soundtrack of his voice. In much the same way, I think about your voice as the thing. Where our phone calls used to be an intermediary for friendship, something we would do in order to make our coveted bodily reunion better and smoother and sweeter, to stay in touch until we could share space again. It is now the thing in itself. And every day, I feel less like I'm supplementing you with your voice or pretending that your voice mimics the same satisfaction that our bodies made together. I know that's stupid. The fun we had in that club that one time is not the fun that we have when I sit stationary, still, dialing your number, or when I play your 15-minute audio message on my daily run. It is a different kind of fun, but for now, it is the thing. For now, these collages of your voice that I have saved on my phone are the meat of the friendship, and I am sucking it so dry. Your voice stopped being the half of you and became the whole the moment we resigned ourselves to staying within the borders of our own countries, the borders of our own bodies too, bodies which so often used to forget that there were lines where you started and I ended. Now, almost every day, I have a play date with your voice. And it's a duet that is much more intimate than anything we've ever done before because, a secret to the outside world, you accompany my day-to-day. You soundtrack actions that are mundane and, with your voice in my body, transferred through headphones, the tasks become exciting. The telephone elevates you to something holy, a disembodied voice that guides me through my worldly encounters. An omnipresent sound that fills the vacuum of my body and demands my attention. We get to be gods for each other, and we pray not by kneeling, but by pressing record. I started praying around the same time we ritualized the voice note. And in all honesty, there is little difference. It is language with intention. It is the gift of an honest rambling, one that does not need any tie to a body to leave its impact or be marked as successful. I started praying around the same time, and the truth is that praying to a God and praying to you feel similar, and that they are conduits to surprises. I am often surprised by what I say when I am recording myself. I am often surprised by the break in my voice that happens at the 7th minute mark, or the tears I start shedding in a message that begins by talking about ice cream flavors, but then turns into a meditation on our mothers. The last few times I've felt lonely, it's been due to a shortage of surprises. Because between Hannah Arendt and Celine, I've learned that every surprise is a miracle. So when something isn't immediately a miracle, I laugh and point. And that laughing and pointing is fun, but sometimes it's lonely. That is, an action that I do alone. Sometimes I feel lonely when no one wants to laugh and point at the mundane with me. But when I record myself, I often surprise myself. And isn't that the reason we all pray? To be so honest about what we desire that we make a miracle? And this moment of pure surprise is passed from me to you and saved as a sonic souvenir of our auditory miracle. Should I question the fact that I'm more privy to miracles when I'm standing alone, broadcasting my voice to the bodiless you I've come to love? And does the way I loved you then mean something radically different from the way that I love you now? Now that the whole of you on the surface would seem to be less than it was in November, but we know that it's not. It's just that our masses and physical volumes no longer factor into the size of our friendship. Did we have as many miracles and surprises when our bodies were a part of the thing? I've always thought that bodies were honest and the voice was the tricky lie that needed to be overpowered. What I've realized is that the disjuncture is not between body and voice, but between voice and words. The voice belongs to the body, and together they adopt language. And that's when the lies occur. Consider Bart. The power of language. With my language, I can do everything, even and especially say nothing. I can do everything with my language, but not with my body. What I hide by my language, my body utters. I can deliberately mold my message, not my voice. By my voice, whatever it says, the other will recognize that something is wrong with me. I am a liar by preterition, not an actor. My body is a stubborn child. My language is a very civilized adult. So it turns out the thing of our friendship is not without body after all. We have not been subjugated by our supposedly shared language, but instead been given the opportunity to relish in the cracks and crevices of the other's voice, a more ephemeral manifestation of the flesh. I play with your sentences, but above all, I've learned to hang out with the sound of you sipping your coffee before you respond, or with the breaths at the end of a monologue that remind me that no matter how whole I think you are, we are always connecting on the terrain of opacity. It's not a half you, it's that the whole you is an opaque you. And thank God for that. Savannah and I called once after months of only corresponding through audio messages. And I told her that I felt like we were big fans of each other's podcasts. Big fans who were finally meeting and felt that they had to prepare for the call like they would an interview. Sometimes I worry that the voice message stunts my ability to react in normal time. Because I have a lot, perhaps too much, agency in when, where, and how I choose to listen to you, to let your voice consume my ears and in effect my body. Sometimes I worry about that. Consider the phone call. Every time we start at the same time, I feel it in my body. Every time I talk over you, I wince, but you probably can't hear my winces, my jerks, my twirling of my hair. But they're happening silently. So they must be a part of our interaction. The voice notes make the awkwardness of interaction something that exists in my own terrain. It is my pause or my mispronunciation. When we call, that same awkwardness is ours. The sticky sentence of our friendship. And this can feel bigger and harder, like we're trying to find a groove. The first time we called after I left the country, it took an hour to find the groove. Funny to groove with you. Groove was so physical for us. I wouldn't have spoken to you if I hadn't seen your body's groove. I mean that watching you dance was the point of interest. I mean that after 4 hours of sweating, we wanted 6 more. I mean that 4 plus 6 is 10, and only after we moved until we were made of sweat and all of my body's water came out of hiding to greet you, only then did we decide it was time to say hello. So it's funny to groove with you, because bodily groove was everything. I didn't want to talk to you when we first met, really, not at all. I thought it would be less honest if we talked and it would ruin it. I liked knowing you outside of language. It felt like there was less to unlearn. So now I groove with your voice, and it takes me remembering that it's just another part of your body to calm me down enough to find a rhythm. Because everyone knows you can't groove if you're nervous. I used to fear with every verbal exchange that I'd forget more and more. That in seeking to supplement a connection that was rooted in groove with my voice, I would lie so much that my body would become invisible to you. And to me, that the marks of physical memory would become invisible. That there would only be fickle language where once there was the undeniability of flesh. But your voice gives me enough, now that we don't speak, to keep in touch until the next time we touch, but instead because the talking is the meat of the friendship. No obvious return makes calling the thing. And I'm enthralled by it because between words I hear you chewing. And I like the sound that my tongue against my teeth makes, and I like that you get to hear it more than the people I touch every day. This playtime between voices, these rambling prayers that we hear and replay months later, these unedited podcasts that soundtrack what was once mundane, these comprise the ephemeral body of our friendship, and it's one we have made and remake together. And it is a stateless body that walks with me everywhere. No, I'm not lonely.